we attempted to put a nuclear weapon on the moon and explode it for scientific measurements and other things, which was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials.
And what happened?
They destroyed the weapon before it got to the moon. The idea of any explosion in space by any Earth government was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials, and that has been demonstrated over and over.
Welcome to the world of secrecy. A Michigan State University economist teamed up with multiple researchers, including Catherine Austin Fitts, former Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. They found trillions of unaccounted for dollars missing from housing and DoD and going towards black budget programs. We are talking about Special Access Programs, SAP. We have unacknowledged and waived SAPs. These programs do not exist publicly, but they do indeed exist. They are better known as deep black programs. A 1997 U.S. Senate report described them as so sensitive that they are exempt from the standard reporting requirements to the Congress. I am mentioning this stuff because whatever is happening regarding the moon, you can bet that it's being funded by trillions of dollars from within these deep black budget programs. We'll get to some of that information later, but first, let's draw our attention to a strange Wikileaks document titled Report that UR Destroyed Secret U.S. Base on Moon. Unfortunately, the document is not an electronic document. Therefore, its entire contents are not available online. For anybody truly interested in reading the entire thing, a Freedom of Information Act request, FOIA, may be in order. Without speculating here, we can conclude that this is what it says it is: a report regarding possible space wars that are taking place in the classified world. The document title alone not only exposes the reality of these alleged wars, but the possibility of a secret moon base belonging to the United States that apparently was in operation until it was destroyed by UR, Soviet Union. So what other information exists besides this document, showing that something strange is and has been happening on the moon? There's a lot of information, so it's hard to know where to begin. First of all, the idea of bases on the moon has been an open discussion within the government for a long time. Although the information isn't easy to find, it's definitely out there. A document from the government's own publishing office is a great example. It clearly shows one of the goals of the United States government is to build a base on the moon. And this is as far back as 1966. A portion of the document reads, regarding Presidents Kennedy and Johnson in a statement by Honorable George P. Miller, "I also believe that we can and will achieve the goals set by Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, a manned landing on the moon before 1970. My own confidence in our rapidly advancing science and technology is such that I can visualize many more dramatic achievements ahead, although I will fix no timetable for them. Furthermore, decades-old documents have been declassified discussing this topic, showing how serious and far possible advancements in these intentions have gone." Take a look at the screenshot taken from the CIA electronic reading room in the form of a memorandum that was addressed to the CIA director regarding military thought, top secret, by Lieutenant General N. Koronevsky. Already, interest in the moon is not limited to a study of questions and a discussion of discovered potentialities. Specific projects are being worked out that propose the construction of various structures under the surface of the moon, from the freight compartments of missiles and the employment of various versions of pneumatic structures. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and also various American companies, Martin, Aerospace, etc., are conducting a great deal of work in this direction. This brings to mind another document from Wikileaks in the form of an email sent to politician John Podesta from Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, and Dr. Carol Rosen. It reads as follows: Dear John, because the war in the space race is heating up, I felt you should be aware of several factors as you and I scheduled our Skype talk. Remember, our nonviolent ETI from the contiguous universe is helping us bring zero-point energy to Earth. They will not tolerate any forms of military violence on Earth or in space. The following information was shared with me by my colleague Carol Rosen, who worked closely for several years with Wernher von Braun before his death. Carol has worked on the Treaty on the Prevention of the Placement of Weapons in Outer Space, attached for your convenience. A declassified report by the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center from June 1959 shows just how seriously they considered a plan called Project A119. In general, they wanted to investigate the capability of weapons in space and gain further insight into the space environment and the detonation of nuclear devices within it. Interesting, to say the least, but it's essential to recognize the intentions behind the letter. That is, the recognition that humans have brought and will continue to bring their destructive ways into space by weaponizing it or attempting to weaponize it. With all of this documentation, it's also interesting to look into witness testimonies from credible sources. In the 1950s, Colonel Ross Dedrickson was responsible for maintaining the inventory of the nuclear weapons stockpile for the AEC, and accompanying security teams testing the security of the weapons, among many other duties. When it comes to weaponizing space, which is clearly outlined within multiple documents linked above, this is what he had to say. I also learned about incidents involving nuclear weapons, and among these incidents were a couple of nuclear weapons sent into space that was destroyed by the extraterrestrials. At the very end of the 70s and the early 80s, we attempted to put a nuclear weapon on the moon and explode it for scientific measurements and other things, which was unacceptable to the extraterrestrials. They destroyed the weapon before it got to the moon. Dedrickson is one of the hundreds of whistleblowers with verified, credible, and impressive backgrounds to speak up about an extraterrestrial presence. In that same interview, he went on to state that a spacecraft went to the rescue of Apollo 13, and they accompanied Apollo 13 on their voyage around the moon back to Earth. And on 2 occasions, they thought they might have to transfer the crew to their spacecraft, but they saw them safely back to Earth. This may explain why several astronauts have also been quite outspoken about an extraterrestrial presence, like Edgar Mitchell, Brian O'Leary, Story Musgrave, Gordon Cooper, and many others. Another document from 1965 regarding the CIA keeping tabs on Soviet space plans reads as follows. The Soviets have additionally stated their intention to establish a lunar base subsequent to manned lunar landing, but no significant details or meaningful timetables have been revealed. If Soviet manned lunar landing is undertaken as a follow-on to extensive Earth orbital operations and instrumented exploration of the moon, it is likely that they will enjoy some advantages in the establishment of a lunar base. Such an approach would allow for the concurrent development of the technology of lunar transportation and that of maintaining man in space for extended periods. It is possible that a late lunar landing may be followed rapidly by the establishment of a Soviet base on the moon. Keep in mind, this was more than 50 years ago. The following is an interesting quote from Carl Sagan. It is not out of the question that artifacts of these visits still exist, or even that some kind of base is maintained, possibly automatically, within the solar system to provide continuity for successive expeditions. Because of weathering and the possibility of detection and interference by the inhabitants of the Earth, it would be preferable not to erect such a base on the Earth's surface. The moon seems one reasonable alternative. We don't hear about black-budget programs or about people who have looked into them. However, the topic was discussed in 2010 by Washington Post journalists Dana Priest and William Arkin. Their investigation lasted approximately 2 years and concluded that America's classified world has become so large, unwieldy and secretive that no one knows how much money it costs, how many people it employs, how many programs exist within it, or exactly how many agencies do the same work. Our world is not how it's been presented. Many subjects once, and that still are deemed as a conspiracy, are not a conspiracy. Strange things happening on the moon and UFOs, for example, are one of several great examples. It's okay to explore these things, but it's vital that we examine good sources and present good sources when we do so.